Sure. And so my program focus will really be about solving problems or challenges that face Illinois farmers regarding nutrient management, both for agronomic and production and economic benefits, but then also environmental benefits as well, because there are really a lot of win-win solutions when looking at some of those issues that we want to face. So my day-to-day life in terms of my job is really focused on what I can do to serve Illinois farmers through my research and extension programming, and then also some teaching on campus.
Okay, so you're going to be out doing, you'll have test plots out. You'll have, in some places, you'll be taking the results of those to farmer meetings. See you pop up in video and in print media now and then. So you're going to be a famous name and a famous place for folks who are wanting to solve some fertility problems.
Yeah, I was very excited to have the opportunity to come to Illinois and work with so many great scientists, agronomists, and farmers as well. I've been lucky enough to cross paths with some agronomists in industry and farmers from Illinois throughout my young career so far, but I'm very excited to get around the state. One thing that I'm very passionate about is understanding the soils and the people and the cropping systems, whereas an extension scientist I'm really serving. And so that's something that I really look forward to, is making contacts around the state. And seeing how we can work together to get to the next level for nutrient management.
Something that's come up in the last couple of years, we had a dry year last year, and in a lot of Illinois, some farmers were wondering, well, could they have gotten a better yield if they put on more fertilizer? This year we've got a wet year. It's totally different. We've got a good crop coming on. But it has really, I think, raised a lot of questions in a farmer's mind. Are those soil tests that we get taken every year or every other year, they are different from one lab to another? What should we really be trusting in those? Do we really know what we have, and do we really know what we need to apply to get that best yield?
Sure, and so when thinking about consistency or reproducibility of soil testing and also soil nutrient analysis, there's some intralab variability depending on methodologies and some of the details within how samples are processed. Also, the interpretation of that is really important. And so when we think about annual variability in weather and soil conditions, the most important thing is that we're interpreting soil test values that were calibrated and correlated within the framework of where we're working in. So really what that means is was the research done in similar soils, and does it take into consideration different weather and soil conditions to give the interpretation that we want to use for fertilizer recommendation or fertilization guidance. And so it's really about making sure that the research that was done for the interpretation of those tests represents the area, the soils, and the cropping systems where they're intended to be used. There's certainly variability when we look at reported values over time and space, and that'll be a part of my research program that I'll be looking at. How can we accurately predict nutrient availability to guide fertilization?
And I'm sure a lot of farmers are going to be wanting to follow that closely. How are you going to be conducting that research? What will you really be doing that they can know, hey, this is something that's trustworthy?
Certainly. Well, the University of Illinois certainly has a nice network of research and education stations where some of my work will be done, but I'm really excited to expand and partner with farmers to work on-farm research and implementation and experimentation. I really think catching spatial variability of responses to fertilization or soil nutrient availability is something that we can get to the next level from what I would consider maybe our more traditional small plot research on experiment stations. That's still very useful because we can start to dive into some very detailed measurements or measurements over time. But on-farm experimentation will certainly be kind of a leg of the milking stool, so to speak, of my research program.
One of the companies that's gotten a lot of attention lately is Precision Planting, and they have something called a radical process with a whole new computerized system, and they're promoting that a lot, and a lot of farmers are looking at that and wondering. Have you been exposed to that? Are you aware of what they're doing, and is that something that farmers may want to take a second look at?
Certainly. Well, I've been lucky enough to be collaborating with some scientists as precision planting at my work in Wisconsin, and I'll bring that relationship to Illinois as well. And so one of the interesting things about any new soil test, whether it be from what the radical agronomic system or that another lab is adopting, is we need field calibration of those methods. And so that's where there can be a really nice partnership between extension scientists like myself that are doing a lot of research around the state, and then the applied practitioners as well that are maybe using some methods that weren't traditionally within the Illinois Agronomy Handbook, for example. And so there'll be a nice relationship there. I've worked with scientists, with Dr. Brad Jorn at Precision Planting, and I think there'll be a nice relationship that we can make sure that we take into consideration the end user of fertility recommendations around the state. And that's something that'll be really exciting to work with, is understanding what the stakeholders are using those recommendations for in terms of their fertilization.
So I think the key here that farmers probably need to think about, they can get a soil test. They need to have it reconciled with what they can produce with their favorite hybrids that they pick out, and make sure that at that point they know that some are going to require a little bit more than what the soil test may recommend. Some may take a little bit less. So a farmer needs to know his own farm more so than just applying fertility based on the numbers from that soil testing lab.
Well, ideally, the soil tests that are taken are representative of the acres that a farmer is managing, whatever that management zone may be, whether it be very finite variable rate prescriptions or management zones or whole field averages. The important thing is we capture that variability when looking at a soil test, looking at different sensor measurements as well. It's not really about the number of samples you take, it's the accuracy that we're representing the variability in the field.
Every field has a different spot in the field that's a sweet spot. Some are bad spots, and so we just really need to know where those spots are. We know where those spots are. We just need to know what they're telling us.
Yes, and you know, no one knows their fields better than the farmers that are in them constantly for field operations. And so if we can partner and provide resources to managing, measuring, and then predicting what's going to occur in those zones within a field, I think that's a win-win for everyone involved in production ag.
Sounds like a lot of variable rate fertility application.
I think the nature of nutrients in soil and plant use is variable, and so if we can try to capture that variability and use it to our advantage when looking at not just the agronomic performance, but the benefit to your checkbook as well, and then the benefit to reducing nutrient losses to the water and air, there's a lot of collaborations between those kind of different segments of how we want to optimize nutrient use. And that's kind of the meeting we're at today is looking at specifically nitrogen use efficiency within cropping systems.